What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I finally reached breaking point with the Fanboys. I usually ignore them as much as I can on the multitude of topics that they spew their absolute bullshit and misinformation and fanboyism and propaganda on, and I've been avoiding it as much as possible. But the bigger and bigger Monster Hunter World gets, the worse and worse the fanboys get. Now, you can be a hardcore Nintendo fan, that's fine. You can be a hardcore Switch fan, that's fine. You can be a hardcore Monster Hunter fan, that's fine. You can be a hardcore Xbox, PlayStation, or PC fan, that's fine. But when you cross over to, when you pass that line and you're in fanboy territory, be it a fanboy of one of the things I've just listed or a multitude of them, there is where the issue stems from. I'm going to just rant on it basically in this video. And what am I ranting about? It's mostly the Nintendo slash, well, let's pull it back a little bit. It's mostly either one of three groups: the Nintendo fanboys, the Monster Hunter fanboys, or the crossover between them, the Monster Hunter and Nintendo fanboys at the same time. And this is what starts to get me, and this is where it gets annoying, and this is where I'm starting to lose the plot. Because everywhere I look, I can look around on Twitter, I can look around on YouTube to see videos, I can look in basically anything somewhat related to it in the comments of a YouTube video, and it's there. I can go onto a website, be it a Sony website, be it a Microsoft website, be it a PC website, or be it a Nintendo website. I will see the idiocy coming from all camps. It's usually worse on the Nintendo side because both of them cross over, only for this one as the example, but you get my point. And I'm finally saying enough is enough. No more of this bullshit. So there's so much absolute propaganda and what I can only call butthurt. Sheer absolute butthurt from Nintendo fanboys at the moment. Now, remember, I've said it at the start of the video. I'm a Nintendo fan. If you're a Nintendo fan, a logical Nintendo fan, this video isn't about you, because you're probably okay. The same if you're a Monster Hunter fan, not a fanboy, because those are usually idiots. But this video also isn't about you. It's about the butthurt, idiotic, bruised ego fanboys. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first off, let's put a number out there real quick, just to give you some perspective. In approximately 3 weeks since its launch, Monster Hunter World, yes, the official 5th game in the main series of Monster Hunter, despite what butthurt Nintendo fanboys will tell you, has shipped approximately 6 million units, including digital sales, making it the best-selling Monster Hunter game, the best-selling individual Monster Hunter game ever made. And of course, it's not on the Nintendo platform. It's on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and later this year, it's coming to PC. And this is absolutely destroying the egos of Nintendo fanboys, because Nintendo fanboys for the longest time have considered themselves the saviors of Monster Hunter. Despite Monster Hunter starting on PlayStation 2, not really finding success there, I'm not going to lie about that at all. But once it moved to the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, Monster Hunter blew up immensely. In fact, at one point years ago, Capcom actually credited publicly the success of Monster Hunter on the PSP, mostly in Japan, because the PSP lasted way longer in Japan than it did anywhere else, mostly primarily thanks to Monster Hunter, and Capcom have come out and praised it and credited the PSP for keeping Monster Hunter alive. Because chances are, if the Monster Hunter games on PS2, well, they pretty much kind of failed and flopped or whatever. If the ones on the PSP didn't work, Monster Hunter was probably dead. And then, of course, as time went on and hardware went on and sales and hardware was abandoned and new hardware came out, they moved over primarily to the Wii and the 3DS. The 3DS, of course, being the big one. Sure, there was Monster Hunter on the Wii, and then there was that crappy Wii U port. But since the highly successful PSP games, it's mostly been on just the 3DS, really. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate and Monster Hunter 4. I kind of got those backwards. Monster Hunter 3, because Ultimate was on the Wii U, and Monster Hunter Ultimate 4. And Monster Hunter Generations, or Cross, depending on where you live. And now that it's moved over to the more modern platforms, The Nintendo fanboys are coming out of the woodwork with all sorts of ass hurt. You are hearing some absolute bullshit out there, which is all completely untrue. You're hearing bullshit like, oh, Sony paid for exclusivity. No, it's not exclusive. It's a multi-platform game on 3 different platforms, just not the Nintendo one. Oh, Sony specifically paid to keep it off the Switch. No, that's fucking idiotic. The fact of the matter is, and I've usually been pretty vocal about this, the Switch is the only one of the 4 current platforms that has a different development architecture. The Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and the PC all use very similar x86 based architecture. When you're developing a game, there's very little you have to change to make it run on the other platform. And then there's the Nintendo Switch, which uses the Tegra ARM-based processor, which, while yes, somewhat similar, is not similar enough. And that brings us to the main point, the big differences with all the current platforms and the Switch. The Switch is vastly underpowered in relation to the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and of course the godlike PC. Now when you look at the actual world and the visuals of Monster Hunter World, it is by far the best looking Monster Hunter game ever made. It's far more advanced, graphically, visually, computationally, with a living, breathing world compared to anything we've seen before. Compared to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, even compared to the Switch version of Monster Hunter Double Cross, only in Japan. There's just no competition. There's also other reasons why they would do this. They obviously want to push out onto a more broader audience and a wider audience, especially with what they can do with the power. Because let's face it, the Switch is doing phenomenal sales-wise. There's no denying it whatsoever. But the hardware is such a limiting factor that they clearly don't want to take the option to gimp it down to that. Instead, they're releasing it to 35 million Xbox One gamers, 74 million PlayStation 4 gamers, and hundreds of millions of PC gamers. Versus the Switch, again selling like crazy, but you see my point. And I know someone is going to be out there saying, oh, but what about the 3DS? That sold 72 million units. Yes, the 3DS has sold 72 million units. It's also using hardware from about 10 or 12 years ago. Despite the console obviously not coming out 10 or 12 years ago, but it was using much outdated lower end hardware when it actually launched. So they could launch it on the Switch and maybe the 3DS and severely limit and gimp the game and the scope of the game, or release it on the 3 modern platforms. So they went and released it on the 3 modern platforms, and look how well that worked out for them. The game has already sold, like I mentioned, more units than any other Monster Hunter game previously, and it did that in 3 weeks. The game is hype as fuck. You look around anywhere, everyone is talking about Monster Hunter, and it kills me that the PC version isn't going to be out till later this year. And you also have other idiot Nintendo fanboys out there. Remember, fanboy is the key word here, who are saying that Capcom are lazy and that the Switch could run Monster Hunter just as good as the other platforms. It absolutely could not. So where does this leave Nintendo for the future for Monster Hunter and Capcom? Well, to be completely honest, if we do ever see more Monster Hunter games on the Switch, they will be spin-off games. I mentioned it already that a lot of Nintendo butthurt fanboys are already out there saying, oh, it's not a main series game, despite the actual director and lead producer of the games, or not the games, but of Monster Hunter World, actually coming out and saying, yes, this is Monster Hunter 5, this is the 5th installment in the main series, but we specifically called it Monster Hunter World to not turn off other people, newer players, who may not have played 1, 2, 3, 4, any of the combination, or even all of them. They've even specifically cited the use of the word world to appeal to new players, with the reasoning is that Monster Hunter is a brand new world for all these new players. Another card that the Nintendo fanboys are trying to pull is, oh, it's a bit dumbed down, it's nowhere near as good as a Monster Hunter game as the rest of them. Now, from what I hear, the game is a little bit easier than Monster Hunter in its previous generations and iterations, but at the same time, Monster Hunter has always had a pretty steep learning curve. I'm not going to deny that. I've played a lot of Monster Hunter games, and I've played some serious amount of time in Monster Hunter games, and yes, they do have a very steep learning curve. And with the way that the actual producers and directors have marketed this game, more accessible, newer players, people who have never played Monster Hunter before, they didn't want it to be prohibitive to get straight into it. So yes, they did probably dumb it down just a little bit. But look at what we got out of it because of it. The game looks great, even on the console. Sure, it plays like shit on them, but it still looks good. And I can't wait for that to translate to higher resolutions, better graphical settings than even the consoles have, and 60 plus frames per second. But look at what we got out of it. It's one big, free-flowing world. That was one of the major complaints that a lot of people had with Monster Hunter previously, because it was generally shackled to lower-end hardware with very, very harsh limitations. Gone is a very small area broken into 9 different places, all with little extra loading screens between them. It's one smooth, seamless area, all in one gigantic area. I'm saying area a bit too much, but it's fully explorable, open world style, not broken up every 10 seconds by loading screens. And let's face it, who wants to go back to that? So everything you're seeing out there at the moment from the Nintendo fanboys are just butthurt propaganda lies. There was no payment to keep it off the Switch. There was no payment for exclusivity because the game isn't exclusive. Nintendo didn't save Monster Hunter like they will have you believe, and they're not entitled to Monster Hunter World. Now, for all I know, maybe a year from now it might come out on the Switch, in which case I can't wait to see how much that was visually and performance-wise dumbed down. But of course, at that point they'll just cry, "Oh, poor optimization, poor port." But hey, they've said there's no plans for World on Switch, so I don't care. Anyway, I will eagerly await the PC release later this year. I think it was coming out in August of 2018. God, that feels so far away, but hell, it is what it is. So let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on the whole Monster Hunter situation. Are you playing it on a current system? Are you playing it on Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and absolutely loving it? Are you a logical Nintendo fan that wishes you do had the game, but you're not going to kick up propaganda lies and fuss about it? Because remember, you guys are cool, I have no problem with you. It's the idiot fanboys I have the problem with. Are you waiting for the PC version just like myself? And what do you think about all the bullshit lies and propaganda over soothing their own egos, licking their own wounds that Nintendo fanboys are doing just over this absolute bullshit? I mean, it's going to get worse as it goes along, Nintendo fanboys. More and more games are going to be announced. They're not going to be coming to the Switch, but that's a whole other video. So let me know all that good stuff in the comment section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know if I did a good job on a video, if you liked it or not. I can't even lure you in to say if you like these rants, hit the subscribe button, because to be honest, I don't really rant a lot. But this one, it just burned my balls the wrong way. And on Valentine's Day too. Really, people? Really? Anyway, I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.